Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlicker, shills, debt slaves, serfs, peasants, vassals, minions, meat sacks. I'm Useful Idiot. Welcome. And so, wow, let's celebrate. Spending on arms has reached an all-time new record, $2.7 trillion in 2024, and that's up 10% from 2023. And 10 years straight of records set for buying of arms internationally. Over 100 countries involved. And a lot of places like Europe are actually raising taxes and borrowing money and taking on debt and cutting aid in their own countries just to bolster their militaries. And we know a number of the factors involved. Of course, Trump has made it clear that Europe has to take on a lot more responsibilities for its own defense. And now we have Russian fear, or the fear of Russia, amping things up in Europe. And then, of course, we have the ramping up of fear of China. And that's my basic point. We have an atmosphere of fear and war fever that it just grips the world, and everybody arms themselves to the teeth. And it kind of reminds me of pre-World War I, when all the countries of Europe, including Russia, were amassing huge military forces with all the newest modern weapons. And their intent was just to have these powerful militaries, theoretically, to stave off war. And instead, it becomes the whole idea of arming themselves to the teeth so that they'll never have to use it. And then they find an excuse to use it. And then the other component of this, of course, is just the buildup of war fever and fear. And that's the core of all of it, is this creation of fear. And then it becomes this huge cash cow, as always, for arms manufacturers, and that's what we have now. So the Russians are spending double what they did since 2015. Germany's spending 28% more. The U.S. is spending 5.7% more, and are 37% of worldwide spending on arms. And of course, Trump has now upped the military budget of the United States to $1 trillion, which begs the question, of course. Of course, we have supposedly all this Doge savings from waste and fraud, and then in one fell swoop, Trump raises military spending to $1 trillion, and any benefits of cutting fraud and waste are immediately eaten up by the Pentagon. And there's been talk of doing a true audit of the Pentagon and finding waste and fraud there, and it's a veritable smoldering pile of fraud and waste at the Pentagon, and it looks like nothing's going to happen. So instead, we're just going to give the Pentagon $1 trillion a year, and it's just going to invite more fraud and waste. And so a lot of the spending is in Europe. A lot of the spending is in the Middle East, and of course, Israel's arms purchasing is up 65% since 2024, and China is up a mere 7%. And so we have this mass buildup. And of course, we know the answers to some of these things. Israel's buying a lot of weapons so they can get ready to attack Iran. And then we also have endless supply of weapons going to completely obliterate whatever's left of Gaza. And then in Europe, they're building up their military forces. One, to give more weapons to Ukraine, and then to build up for this idea that there's going to be a Russian invasion, which is the furthest thing from the truth. I mean, I know the status narrative is that Russia has invaded Ukraine and they want to push into Europe and continue invading countries, and it's just simply not true. And but they're going to use that as the fear factor here to justify higher taxes, going into debt, and then cutting aid to its citizens in order to arm themselves to the teeth for an invasion that's never going to come. But the proof is in the pudding, and we have a record military spending in 2020, 2024, $2.7 trillion in 1 year, all going to the arms manufacturers. And of course, Smedley Butler published his opus War is a Racket in 1932, I believe, and we still haven't heard the message. Here it is, 100 years later, and the arms industry is still a cash cow, is still running unabated, and everyone else in the world must suffer to make sure that arms flood throughout the world for threats, real threats, and then a lot of manufactured threats. And business is good. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too?